Broken heart syndrome can lead to digestive issues and vice versa. We have energetic meridians and sort of connected to our organs. And in the traditional Chinese theory, your small intestine is connected intimately with your heart meridian. Even our self-talk can affect our sort of heart meridian or our energy. But I'm not here to fix anyone, right? That took me
Mm-hmm.
a long time to learn because
Mm-hmm.
I want people to feel better, obviously. That's my passion and my goal. But really, I've understood recently my role as the guide and the educator and as the cheerleader, right? I'm going to be the person in your corner when you don't feel like you have anybody else.
Hi, and welcome to Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. I am your host, Claudia Noriega-Bernstein. My podcast is all about you and all the courageous women like you. I truly believe we're here to inspire, empower, share, and embrace one another. In my podcast, I talk with women from different backgrounds and careers about love, family, friendship, their wins and falls, and the life they love. We explore our feminism, challenges in an intimate and honest way. I truly believe we can only fly if we embrace each other. I have a new episode every week. Please go check it out. I hope you enjoy it and can't wait to hear from you. Hi everyone. Today I'm so excited to have Jen Yundt Coles. Yay, I said it right. She's an AFMC-certified integrative and functional medicine nutritional health coach. That's long.
It's a
Oh my
mouthful.
God.
Yes, you're right.
Welcome. I am so happy you're here. I know you're the creator of the hydrogen sulfide solution program, but you're specialized in SIBO. And for me, that was really foreign. The first time I saw those syllables, I didn't understand what it was. So I'm sure a lot of people like me don't know. And because of that, I am so excited that you're here. So welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Claudia. It's my pleasure. My pleasure to be here.
What I love about your story is that you found out about SIBO,
SIBO.
going through your own symptoms and trying to figure out what was wrong with you, correct?
Yeah, yeah. It was a long road, like many of us. Should I just dive in?
Dive in and tell me a little bit about what made you curious. What got you to the point where you said, I'm not only going to find out what's wrong with me, but I am going to dedicate my life to help other people that are going through the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like many of us in the functional medicine world, we got here because of our own personal health issues, or maybe someone in our family that we were trying to help. And just that drive to sort of think outside of the box and rebel against the conventional medicine approach and things like that. And I'm not really different in that aspect, but I think my story really is rooted in childhood and adolescence, struggling with, digestive issues and, you know, kind of holding on to anxiety and worry inside my gut. Of course, I didn't know what that was or realize what that connection was until I was older and, as an adult. But after decades of suffering with constipation, that's kind of how I started out and living my life in a constant go, go, hustle, entrepreneurial type of mindset.
Mhm.
And then, also having relationship issues and sort of disconnect and feeling isolated, just basically in the medical world, feeling like my doctors didn't understand what I was trying to tell them, doing all the tests and quote unquote coming back normal. And then eventually just saying, Jen, here's an antidepressant. We don't know how else to help you. And I just knew that there were more answers.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like the little seed inside my heart, right? I'm just constantly looking for the answers. I'm an investigator, I'm a questioner, and I always like to push back a little bit and get to the root cause. So living my life through several different businesses at one point, I just got to a point where I was really just overdoing it, trying to be a mom, trying to be a wife, um, trying to run my business, all kinds of things. And it was just a heavy load. And eventually I ended up with broken heart syndrome. and in my early 40s. So this was a huge wake up call to me. I do have a health history, or a family history rather, of heart conditions. So that was really like, whoa, I need to slow down and I need to figure out what's going on. And that whole episode, not only was it life-changing personally, but professionally, because that gave me my first taste of functional medicine. I hooked up with a practitioner at that time when I moved to Sacramento, and
Mhm.
she's the one that actually first said to me, "Hey, Jen, have you ever heard of SIBO? Maybe we should test you for that." Because what happened was lifelong constipation changed to chronic diarrhea after the broken heart event. So that was kind of my introduction to the world of SIBO. I had never, heard of it. I was always told I had IBS, which is such a generic, lame, catch-all kind of diagnosis for intestinal issues.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of where it began. And even my experience with that functional medicine practitioner, and also my GIs through my insurance, they really didn't know that much about SIBO. They kind of, on the surface, kind of knew what it was. And I even treated at that point with one of them and ended up with hydrogen sulfide, which is the mysterious third uh, SIBO type right now. And so that drove me further down the rabbit hole. I went back to school for health coaching and functional medicine, put myself through a medicine program. And uh, when word got out that I overcame SIBO and was helping other people do the same, that's when I decided to rebrand and just focus on SIBO. And within the realm of that, for your listeners, by the way, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And we can talk more about that in a minute. But right now, there are sort of three categories, generally speaking. And the one that was less studied or understood is hydrogen sulfide SIBO. And that's actually become my specialty. So that's
Wow.
where I'm at.
It's so crazy to me to listen to you telling your story because it's so familiar in so many ways with mine. I have suffered with stomach issues my whole life, and my husband lost a daughter at 28 years old for Crohn's. He was she was
Oh,
suffering from
goodness.
Crohn's,
Yeah.
and she had a lot of symptoms, of course, extremely severe. But I would see those symptoms and I would go, well, I have pain. And sometimes I eat something. I gotta run to the bathroom. And sometimes I get bloated and I don't know what's wrong. And like you, when I was younger, I was constipated a lot. And the ironic thing about what you said is that I'm a writer, and aside of coaching women and having my show, I used to write articles for newspaper and magazines, and I wrote an article about broken heart syndrome. And I
Oh,
really,
wow.
really investigated because a lot of people think that's a myth.
Hmm.
Nobody can die of a broken heart. But I remember there was an actress that died, and then her mom died after she died. And I was super curious about it. And I noticed when I was writing that, and the ripple effect of the syndrome, was intestinal issues. And I remember how my problem with my gut changed after my divorce. And,
Hmm.
and I related to the broken heart. I'm like, wait a minute. You think that the broken heart syndrome is just emotional and psychological, but you don't attach it to your body.
Right.
And the 28 years later, I know a lot more than what I knew when I got divorced and when I wrote that article. And I know how the emotions can get stored in my body, then how stress can affect my digestion system, and how sometimes I could be just in the middle of a lunch and somebody says something and immediately I have a reaction and I have to go to the bathroom because, like you, it's not a constipation anymore. Now my stomach just it's like it opens and let whatever I'm eating go through.
Yeah.
Like, everybody out of the way, because it's going to be a scene here if I don't just
Hmm.
get to a toilet, pretty much. So
Yeah.
can you talk a little about the broken heart syndrome so my audience understand that this is not a myth, it's something real, and how that affect our gut.
Yeah, so what a great question. And there's so much to unpack there, but I think generally I'll say so the technical word I believe is Takotsubo myocardiopathy
Mm-hmm.
or myocarditis. And essentially, you can feel like you're having the full on heart attack. I had all the symptoms: chest compression, I felt nauseous, I had back pain, it went up into my jaw and down my arm and everything. Classic sort of symptoms. And even ever since then, I've still had some chest pains and things that I have to really pay attention to because I know that stress is related to it. It's really such an intimate connection for me and my personal body, and that's where it kind of shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting because, yes, broken heart syndrome can lead to digestive issues and vice versa. It's interesting too, the role of cortisol and the fight or flight kind of place that we end up, getting stuck in. And interestingly, too, I'll share in the beginning of my career, before I had children, I actually studied traditional Chinese medicine and acupressure.
Mm-hmm.
And during that experience, I learned that, we have energetic meridians and sort of connected to our organs. And in the traditional Chinese theory, your small intestine is connected intimately with your heart meridian. And I find this so fascinating because our small intestine is acting as sort of the secretary. It's sorting out the information from the food. You're, taking in your nutrients and then discarding the rest into the large colon. And your heart is also processing like that, but it's sort of on a different level, right? It's like emotional conversations we have. Even our self-talk can affect our sort of heart meridian or our energy. And I love just sort of the visual of those two things being connected. And I see it actually a lot in my practice now. And I try to put this forward into, how I help my clients because we're not only talking about the small intestine, everything is connected in the body. And we'll often sort of start unpacking or peeling away layers of that onion to discover things that maybe they've been holding on to.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, I'll also share that the large colon in Chinese medicine is related to the lungs, which is where we hold sadness and grief and things like that, which is also very connected emotionally to our heart and being able to let things go, right? And feeling constipated and things like that. So I always like to ask more questions when I'm working with my clients because I just know that there's something deeper that we can unpack.
Right.
Yeah.
What else are you holding on to that is not allowing you to heal?
Exactly, exactly. And I think sometimes, I always try to preface this before I work with someone,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really important for my clients to understand that when they come work with me, I'm not just giving you some blanket protocol or, I don't write prescriptions either, but I'm not giving you just a pill to take and go home. We're talking about all the things that may be keeping you stuck in SIBO land, whether that's your job or your environment. Maybe you're stuck in a moldy home and you don't realize it, or a relationship that's causing you to play small and you feel stuck, or some sort of self-belief from childhood that you don't even realize
Mm.
is sort of keeping you stuck in sort of a box, right? And so there's lots more to explore than just what's going on with one strain or two in the small intestine. Yeah.
And when you don't get curious, you don't find out, It sometimes is the conversations we have in autoplay in our head. And we're stuck in those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's something that is going to happen and we're rehearsing in our head, or sometimes it's something that happened in the past and we're trying to figure out either maybe I should have handled it different, maybe I should have said this, but what if that person said that? And we're stuck in that moment in time. And by repeating that scene in our brain, we're damaging our body and we
Yeah.
don't, we don't realize that. Oh my goodness, this conversation is so on point. And I just want to pause here for a second to speak directly to you. If you're feeling stuck, if you have lost your sense of purpose, please know you're not alone. We all go through moments like this. The good news is there is support and there is a way forward. You can book a one-on-one discovery call with me to see if I am the right person to walk beside you on this journey. Or you can grab a copy of my Brighter Days book. It's filled with the same tools and truths that helped me when I was in the exact place. You will feel seen, understood, and inspired. And if you're craving for connection, come learn more about my beautiful community of like-minded women, all ready to grow, evolve, and rise. All the links are in the description of the show. And now, back to the episode.
And I think that's so important. And I'm really excited about the movement forward in functional medicine in that way, just understanding that, like, wow, we're storing all this information and these experiences and parts of our environment in our cells, right? And we're carrying those with us. And if we don't learn how to, or stop to pause to reflect on those things, process, let go, do whatever we have to do to move on, we will stay stuck. And it may be in your intestinal tract, but it may be, your big toe keeps having like arthritis or something. It's always going to show up somewhere in your body. Your body just gets to choose where.
That is true. It's like your body says, okay, the arm didn't get her attention, so I'm going to go to something that is really going to bother her. So then
Right.
she started getting curious to that. It's true. I mean, I'm 58, so everything hurts me when I wake up in the morning. But and we accept that because, okay, you're a certain age and they're supposed to be that way. But it doesn't. Our
Right.
body is supposed to work like the perfect machine that it is.
Yep.
And when we have those exclamation marks in a way of saying it, right? We gotta pay attention to that and say, okay,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Why is suddenly my lower back hurting? Why suddenly my shoulders feel tight? Why suddenly my knees are hurting me when I get up from bed? And it's not just an inflammation, it's why this inflammation is showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Always ask why and where and how and all the things. I think in conventional medicine, the thing that I rebel against the most,
Mm,
obviously it can be life-saving, and I'm so grateful for it because it saved my life before. But in all their training, doctors really aren't getting, more than a few hours of nutritional training, for
mm,
one.
mm,
And they really are taught to sort of look at you and your complaint, like hear your complaint and sort of categorize or list those complaints and then match them to a pharmaceutical. So it's sort of more of a band-aid approach. Here's the problem, let me put something on top of it. And in functional medicine, we look at it so differently. We're looking at, okay, let's look up upstream.
mhm,
What could be causing this? And to your point, I'm looking through the lens at people in my practice through the intestinal tract, right? And your digestion and your ability to secrete digestive, juices and all of those things. And what's your stress level and all of that. But I see all of these other things really related to what's going on in the gut and your microbiome. We know that your microbiome is in constant communication with your brain. It's a forward feeding loop. And really, when I hear someone say, oh, my knee hurts when I get out of bed in the morning, I'm thinking, well, what could be going on in their gut? Because
yeah.
that's really where all of those things start. If you're not getting your nutrients, your cells are depleted. If you have inflammation in the gut, you can end up with leaky gut, which can lean to things like autoimmunity and
Mhm.
inflammation in other parts of the body, and on and on. So I'm always looking through that lens.
And fibromyalgia, which I want to ask you in a little bit,
Exactly.
but I wanted to ask you also for the small intestinal bacteria, for the SIBO, if we're ignoring, the inflammation and the pain in the back and all that stuff, what are other symptoms that we should really be paying attention to?
Yeah, so, I'll say generally speaking what the main symptoms are for something like SIBO, but I want to preface it with I've had people come to me with SIBO who came out, with SIBO positive, but didn't have any typical digestive issues.
Okay.
So they had like a twitching eye or a chronic migraine or something like that. So I want you to just kind of be mindful of that as I start listing off all these other symptoms.
Right.
But usually it'll manifest, and here's a really, telling sign that you feel bloated or increased gas forming below the navel area in that lower intestinal or abdominal area,
Mm-hmm.
about 90 minutes after you eat. So it can be between 60 and 2 hours, 60
Mm-hmm.
minutes and 2 hours, but it's usually around 90 minutes. That's a sign that there's food fermenting in your small intestine where it's not supposed to be doing that, right? We're supposed to be fermenting our food in the large bowel, not the small.
Right.
Um, Chronic constipation or diarrhea or alternating between both.
Mm-hmm.
You'll also see people who are either chronically constipated and trying to self-treat with laxatives, so then they end up with diarrhea, so it's hard to know. And vice versa. If someone has chronic diarrhea, they're trying to take things like Imodium or Pepto to slow it down, and then they end up constipated. So that gets a little cloudy. And like I said, gas coming from either end, you can have increased heartburn or GERD type of symptoms, nausea, fibromyalgia, like you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
For women, especially, we see with hydrogen sulfide more rare symptoms like vulvodynia or bladder irritation.
Okay.
And so, asking some questions about that. But it can manifest in all sorts of ways: body pain, syndromes, headache, brain fog, cognitive impairment, that twitching muscle, like I said, like maybe you have something going on in your eye, hair loss, skin issues, rashes. I hear all kinds of things about crazy rashes.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the main list of symptoms. Yeah.
And it's not as simple as, okay, I'm not gonna have dairy anymore, or I'm gonna start eating gluten free. It's more than that, right? Because sometimes we self-medicate and we self-diagnose ourselves, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just gonna stop. Like I tell you, I stopped eating meat 7 years ago. Um, I started I started stopping, and how to say that? I stopped eating meat because I was feeling not well after I had a steak. And
Hmm.
then I started reading about it. And then I started, learning how much time that steak takes in your body to digest and how long it's going to stay in your body. And then I started getting freaky about, okay, but when did they kill the cow? And how long after they kill the cow, they're going to bring me the steak? So the cow is already dead like a month, and I'm eating that dead body that I'm putting in my body, and it's going to be in my body for another week. Like, I don't think so. And of course, after I did more research, then, I love animals, and I didn't, and that's my personal opinion. And I decided I am not going to endorse that, and I'm not going to eat meat, period. It's not good for me, and it's not good for the cow. So I'm not eating it.
Yeah.
Um, but that is what we do. We decide, okay, I'm feeling a little bitter when I stop eating certain food. That should be the cause of my problem. So I'm fixed. But it's
Hmm.
deeper than
Oh gosh, that's such a juicy question. So there's so many layers to that, and I'll just try to unpack it. And if I go on a tangent, just bring me back in.
that.
Um, so yeah, we are constantly trying to self-medicate and figure things out and do, trial elimination diets and taking things out and that sort of thing. With SIBO, it's really interesting because you can go on restricted diets. I've seen this in my practice.
Mhm.
People will go on what we call the low FODMAP diet. It's a category of foods that will ferment, easier when it's exposed to those types of bacteria in the small intestine. But, well, I'll just say, those are things like cruciferous vegetables, onions, garlic, sugar alcohols, and things like that. Those are very common triggers for people who have SIBO.
Mhm.
The other thing I'll say is once someone goes on a restricted diet for a long period of time, they start developing food anxiety and worrying about what's going to trigger them. They get really sort of hyper focused on like five foods that they continue
Mhm.
eating. And then they slowly become nutrient deficient. And remember, in order to overcome any sort of what I'm going to call chronic simmering infection in the body, whether it's in your intestinal tract or elsewhere,
Hmm.
you need key nutrients to heal yourself, right?
Right.
And so thinking about, yes, you can do trials. Maybe I'm lactose intolerant. Maybe I'll do, skip some dairy for a while and see how I feel. If you feel improvement, then I say go for it, because there are a lot of people who are lactose intolerant. Like most of the world doesn't eat dairy, right?
Right.
And or drink dairy, and so that's something to note. Dairy is also quite inflammatory in general to a body. It causes
Hmm.
lots of mucus and things like that. But you just want to be mindful, like, am I depriving myself? Am I causing a depletion in certain nutrients by being on this restricted diet?
Hmm.
And then you also need to ask yourself, am I actually addressing the root cause of my symptoms? Is it a food sensitivity, or is there some sort of microbial imbalance that I need to address?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and in my practice, I'll have people go off gluten for a little while because it can be quite inflammatory, even if you're not celiac or gluten intolerant, just because it's a hard protein to digest and it can
Right.
cause things like leaky gut, which we're trying to heal.
Right.
And now I don't remember what exactly your question was. So that's what I said. I'll probably go on a tangent.
No, what I was asking you was like, we self-diagnosed ourselves, so it goes deeper than that. So when
Yeah.
they come to you, you do a series of tests, and I saw that you have in your website also a quiz that
Yep.
they can go and do and find out, oh yeah, I have this, and that. Once you figure it out, okay, this person has SIBO. What's the next step? Do you medicate them? Because you say that you do holistic more than conventional
Yeah.
approach. So once you find out this is your diagnosis. So now, are we going to eliminate food? Are we going to put you on a medication? Are you only allowed to eat this food? I mean, what's the process?
Yeah. So great question. And it's kind of a layered approach. This is how I approach it anyway. And first, for comparison's sake,
Hmm.
I'll tell you what happens in the conventional medicine world. So, say you do have a savvy enough practitioner who recognizes SIBO, because many of them don't believe it exists.
No, they told me I have IBS for years, and I stopped
Yes.
going to the doctor because I'm like, okay, you're giving me this pill, but this pill also have all these side effects. So
Mhm.
now I'm not gonna have pain in my stomach, but I might have polyps when I do a colonoscopy. So this is not gonna
Right.
work for me.
Right. And so, yes, that's not getting to the root cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for SIBO in particular, if you come back with a positive test, the gold standard in the conventional medicine world is to prescribe 2 weeks of rifaximin, which is an antibiotic purported to stay only in the small intestine. It's not systemic.
Okay.
Now, I will say that yes, studies shows that that can be effective, but in those cases, many of those people are relapsing. It's a good 80 to 90% people will relapse pretty quickly after that round of antibiotics. And that's because they're not addressing the person in a comprehensive way. So, this
Mhm.
is sort of how I go about doing it. So, when a person comes to me and they've been diagnosed with SIBO, or I've tested them and I've reviewed their labs, again, I'm not a medical license doctor, I'm
Mhm.
a functional medicine health coach. So I'm going to put this in quotes, right? I don't give people treatments or prescriptions or anything like that. What I do is I make recommendations. So
Right.
first, I'm looking at this whole person sitting in front of me, and I'm asking them so many questions about their health history, their exposures, their daily habits, what they're eating on the regular, what their relationship is like, and all of this. So I can get a really good understanding of who I'm working with. Then I'm going to be talking about things two at the top before I even talk about their SIBO. One is their immune system, and two is their nervous system. So, for some reason, their body has been tolerating this ongoing infection in the gut. So we
Mhm.
have to ask ourselves, what's up with this person's immune system? Why is it impaired? Why is it tolerating this microbial overgrowth?
Mhm.
And we need to support the immune system first before we go down the roller coaster and the river ride, I guess you could call it, of
Mm-hmm.
addressing bacteria and shifting the microbiome because you want a robust immune response to be able to help you overcome that.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is your nervous system, right? I'm working with women who are entrepreneurs, CEOs, creative types who are constantly going, hustling, and all those sort of things. So we have to have a really important conversation about figuring out how to reset themselves into parasympathetic dominance more often than not. Because remember, when we're stuck in fight or flight, there's no time for healing, there's no time for digestion, there's no time for libido and cognitive clarity, right?
Right.
And so when we get ourselves reset into parasympathetic, we can calm down, give our brain the message, okay, it's going to be all right. We can start healing now. We can slow down and we're taking care of ourselves. We don't have to keep running from the tiger.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the first two things. And of course, they're both related because the immune system is affected by the stress response and vice versa. All right. So then we start talking about how to address what's going on in the intestinal tract. And one of the things that's also missing in the conventional medicine approach is talking about biofilms. Now we're starting to geek out a little bit here, Claudia.
That's okay. I'm curious. I'm
Yeah.
listening.
So in our intestinal tract and really everywhere else in our body, we always have sort of this mucosal layer and
Mm-hmm.
it's protective. And when it gets advanced or overgrown or becomes a really thick matrix, like in the intestinal tract, it creates an environment for all sorts of things to take up real estate. So that could be parasites, viruses, candida, mold exposures, and bacteria,
Mm-hmm.
including in the small intestine. So we want to start talking about that first. So this is my analogy that I always tell people. So imagine the old ratty couch on the frat house porch, okay? So that couch is your intestinal lining
Oh boy.
or your biofilm, right? And so you've had a party and there's party cups and chip crumbs and all that kind of stuff. You go out the next day and you sweep off the top and you pick up the cups.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a few weeks later, you're starting to like have smells and things coming out of the cracks and things like that. Sweeping off the top is like a round of rifaximin, for instance. Okay, you didn't fluff the cushions, you didn't get in the cracks, you didn't look underneath the couch. Same with the intestinal lining. That biofilm becomes so thick and opportunistic, I guess you want to call it, that putting rifaximin on top of that, you're just sweeping off the top layer. So you may have some relief
Mm-hmm.
for a few weeks or even a few months. But typically, what happens is those things start coming out of the cracks, the bacteria, the viruses, the parasites, and they start wreaking havoc all over again. And that's why you go back to your doctor. Oh, I need another round of rifaximin. You're not
Right.
addressing what's going on inside there. So
Right.
that's one important part. Then we move on to looking at what sort of treatments, quote unquote, treatments
Mm-hmm.
we use for SIBO. And there's three. So there's the antibiotic approach, and there's
Mm-hmm.
herbals, antimicrobials, and then there's the elemental diet. And all three have shown to be effective when used appropriately and when used in tangent with a comprehensive approach to all these other things we've been already talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And even often in my practice, someone will come to me, oh, I want to get the prescription from my doctor for rifaximin. What do you recommend? We can tie with that. And so that's another conversation I have. I have all sorts of things in my toolbox
Mm-hmm.
to help that rifaximin be more effective.
Okay.
And then there are so many other phases after that stage of addressing the SIBO and the overgrowth because then we have to rebuild and repair. We have to talk about the migrating motor complex to keep things moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get even down to a cellular level. We start talking about hormones and what nutrients are able to get in and out of the cell
I
because,
wanted to talk to you about the hormones too, because I don't know if I'm an isolated case, but I noticed that some things are more acute now that I am going through menopause, and
yes.
I'm taking the hormones. So, what role hormones play in all this?
Oh my goodness, everything.
Really?
I don't ever say that I'm a hormone expert. But I do have the basic understanding of how it's a giant soup, right?
Yeah.
One hormone is always going to be affecting the other. And let me go back to the top of what we were saying. Stress is going to affect all of those sex
Mm,
hormones. Interestingly, for women, remember our estrogen has to be cleared by our liver.
right.
And in the liver, we're also dealing with methylation, which is our detoxification pathways, our sulfation, which could be involved in something like hydrogen sulfide, SIBO. Histamine is a big one. Estrogen and histamine go together, so does cortisol. All of
Mhm.
these things can be at play for someone who has chronic SIBO, why it keeps coming back. So
Wow.
we have to ask all of those questions and figure out how to support the liver and clear the pathways. When you address one pathway, you're affecting another. Whether you're clogging it up, you're slowing another, or you're clearing
Mm,
one and relieving another. So yeah, it's all connected. But yeah, I do see a lot of perimenopause, menopausal, postmenopausal women in my
mm-hmm.
practice. It's just the phase that we're all in.
Yeah.
And even things like irregular periods or endometriosis, that's
Mm.
also um, a root cause for chronic relapse, actually. So it's a
So
good,
somebody that had endometriosis and it has thyroid problems, those two symptoms or those two diagnoses can lead you to believe that that person has SIBO.
yeah. And I'm glad you brought up thyroid because I didn't mention that one, but this is huge because in functional medicine, we like to say if you have a sluggish thyroid function, you can have a sluggish anything else function, including
Right.
digestion, and elimination. So
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, I'll have people get a full thyroid panel. I want to see if they have antibodies, what's going on with their T4 to T3 conversion. Again, that
Right.
also happens in the liver. So we want to make sure that all of our intestinal parts are working properly. But yeah, to your question, um, suboptimal thyroid function can be a root cause for SIBO and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. If you have a microbial overgrowth, and your liver function is impaired, then you may not be getting that thyroid conversion, and then you have a thyroid issue. So it's kind of a forward feeding cycle there.
And when once you do the whole panel and you find out, okay, yes, you have SIBO, this is the treatment I think is best for you, blah, 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 doesn't mean that that person is never going to have a glass of wine again, or that person is never going to have an egg again,
Yeah.
correct?
A lot of people have that fear,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't believe that. I feel like SIBO is so overcomable unless there's a little caveat. I have a very small percentage of my practice who are what I like to call maintenance types people, where they have to maintain because they have chronic SIBO due to a physiological issue. Maybe they've had surgery, they have scar tissue. Some of
Right.
those things can be addressed, yes. But, or I'll say, it just popped in my
Mm-hmm.
head, people who just cannot give up living in a stressful lifestyle, those people will also have the SIBO keep coming back.
I call them the shed magnets because they just attract all the negative around and they're so comfortable in that environment that they don't want to learn anything else.
Yes.
I had one, I mean, I'm very particular with my clients to the point that the discovery call is for me, not so much for them to see if they want to
Yeah.
work for me. Because if you're not coachable, I can help you, and some people, I'm sure you have those patients. I want to get better, I want to get better, but I'm not gonna do what you're telling me to do. So I don't want to waste my time and I don't want to waste your money. So
Yeah.
they I had a person, that wanted me to coach her, and I said no because she liked to attract all the negative, and she felt relevant.
Yes.
She was in that environment. And I didn't feel that I was capable, honestly, to change her mind. So
Mhm.
I'm not the right person for you. And what you said is so true. You need to excuse me, you need to want to heal. You need to
Yes.
want to go through whatever steps you need to go through so you can have the life that you want in your area and in my area, and psychologically and health-wise. And they both work together. So
Yes.
this has been
Yeah.
incredible. I loved everything you shared. I loved all the information we got. I'm gonna have all your links. Do you have like retreats or seminars or anything that people can attend? Do you have something coming that they can learn more
Yeah.
about this with you?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I've actually just put a new webinar that you can get on demand on my website. It's
Mm-hmm.
for entrepreneurs. It's called Gut Check. It's understanding the relationship between your drive and your kind of your mojo and what's going on in your gut. So it's kind of an interesting lens that way. But I think the best way is to sort of book a VIP day with me. That's an intensive, it's about 4 to 5 hours where we just dive in and get it all together. And then you have sort
Mm-hmm.
of a short follow-up after that to make sure you're on track. That's really geared to someone who's like, yes, I'm freaking ready to get over this and get out of this
Right.
stuck place.
I tried
And
everything and nothing worked.
yes, exactly. And so that's for the person who prefers that sort of intensive versus, a longer one-on-one sort of program.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to reflect back, if you don't mind, Claudia, about what you said. This is something I do in my practice too, and I'm giving you a huge gold star for owning that for your own practice. But, I've learned over the years that I'm not here to fix anyone, right? That took
Mm-hmm.
me a long time to learn because
Mm-hmm.
I want people to feel better, obviously. That's my passion and my goal. But really, I've understood recently my role as the guide and the educator and as the cheerleader, right? I'm going to be the person in your corner when you don't feel like you have anybody else. And it's really important, just like you said, when someone comes to me and they want to book a call with me, I'm like, hey, I'm kind of interviewing you too. Like, we're interviewing each other. Like, are we a good match? Are you ready
Yes.
to get this going? Because I
Mhm.
only want to work with people who are ready and committed to making change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love that you're doing that too.
I think it's important, and it really comes from a place of respect for me and for the person that I have in front of me. If you're not ready, take my no as a sign that
Exactly.
you're not ready. You
Yeah.
want all these results, but they're not going to happen magically unless you do the work. My
Hmm.
job is not to heal you. You're going to heal yourself. I'm just going to give you the tools.
That's exactly right. Couldn't agree more.
Jen, it was a pleasure talking to you. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And thank you so much for being in the show.
Yes. Thank you so much, Claudia. I've enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you all for listening to the Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. If you like this episode, please write a juicy comment below and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, we can only fly if we embrace each other. Until next week, be happy, be safe, and be kind to yourself.